So I came of age and came out in San Francisco. And I know what you're all thinking. How fabulous. Well, the problem is that I came out in 1982, just as the community was getting to grips with a terrifying new disease. So what I'm going to talk to you about is how my sense of privacy and anonymity was formed during this time, but also how new technologies that have arisen since then have manipulated our own sense of privacy and what the implications of this are, and in particular, for the state. So as I said, I came of age at a time and came out when my community was grappling with a disease that was making people very sick and dying for no apparent reason. The response from public officials couldn't have been worse. Gay people weren't out, and we were very easy to scapegoat. So they told the public that they needed to be protected from these disease-infected perverts. They talked about quarantine and talked about putting gays into camps. Now, as a result of this, when the HIV test came out, no one would take the test for fear of both being stigmatized, but also being rounded up and taken from their homes. Thankfully, somebody came up with a way to assure privacy and anonymity of the people that wanted to take the test. So when I went to take the test in 1987, they took my blood, and I was handed a number. They never asked me for any information that could identify me. Not my name, not my address, nothing. When I returned 2 weeks later, I handed them my number, and I was given my test result. That result and my identity were never linked. I was convinced of my privacy, and why? It was frickin' 1987. If there was a computer in the clinic, and frankly, I don't remember, the only thing it would have been connected to was a wall socket. I was completely confident in how this number protected my privacy. Now, it's been nearly 30 years since I took the test, and a hell of a lot has changed. A system of interconnected devices has developed all around us in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Data is mind-blowingly accessible, and especially our individual data. And it's because of this that we are now currently having problems in understanding the connection to our privacy. Now, social media hasn't helped us much in this. Mark Zuckerberg famously said a few years ago that there was a new understanding of privacy online, that young people were having a new perception of how personal information was being made available to the public. However, the first group that left Facebook in mass numbers were teenagers who did not appreciate being surveilled by their parents. The other thing that's changed massively in the last 30 years is the threat of terrorism. Eric Snowden has showed us how, or to what extent, that the government is surveilling us. We thought that information that we were putting online, like email, and also conversations that we were having on our mobile phones, were absolutely private. But it turns out the government has been listening in this whole time. Partially for our public safety. The threat of terrorism is real. But also partially simply because they can. The technology makes it super easy. This has really negative repercussions in a place like Iran. Anyone that is putting information online that is in any way critical of the repressive regime there is finding themselves being arrested, put in jail, and then persecuted for crimes against the state. Now, back here in the UK, you're probably saying to yourself, the state is the least of our worries as far as privacy. It seems wherever you stockpile data, people want to get a hold of it. Now, anyone who has an account with TalkTalk will know what I'm saying. It seems that a bunch of teenagers hacked into the TalkTalk servers and got a whole bunch of personal data that was then used to steal a lot of money from TalkTalk customers. So this is the point. Wherever you have a huge amount of personal data, this becomes something incredibly valuable. And this is where most of the tech companies are now making their money. They are gathering up our data, analyzing it, and using it. We have become the product. And now our government is also saying that they want to start stockpiling our information in that recent surveillance bill that has been going through the UK. So they want to stockpile our information in terms of our online browsing history. This is going to be an incredible honeypot for hackers. Now, Apple, Microsoft, and Google are protesting this because they are not confident that the government can protect all that personal data. They are doing their best to try to persuade governments not to go too far because they know that this could possibly undermine our own sense of security in putting personal information online. And this means that they are going to pay the price if we stop doing that. These companies are also guilty of keeping our understanding of privacy and data murky at best. Anyone that's tried to stay on top of Facebook privacy settings will know exactly what I'm talking about. But they've also had the capability to make our email more secure than the old postal system. But here's the rub. If they encrypt our email, they're not going to be able to read it. They will not be able to mine the data from our email. Now, yeah, I love getting the notification on my phone that says I'm running late for a flight. But do I put that do I put that together, that information that they're getting is actually coming out of my email? Our phones are becoming incredible data collection points. And I love it. I actually love being able to see how far I ran in the morning, how many calories I burned, who my next appointment is with. But am I putting two and two together? Do I actually understand that all this data that is on my phone is actually going up onto the internet? And that, my friends, is where we are losing control, is when it goes on the internet. Hey Siri, where am I?
Here you are.
Isn't he helpful? Now this looks like a one-on-one conversation with my phone. But what's actually happening is my query is getting sent across the internet to a server and then coming back to my phone. It looks like it's just a one-on-one conversation, albeit a conversation with an inanimate object. Even the act of reading the newspaper, which we take the pleasure of doing in the most private of places, is no longer private, especially when we do it online. The news media is keeping track of every single article that we are reading, both to keep us interested, to keep serving us stories that we want to read, but also to serve us targeted advertising. Where we used to pay for a printed paper with money, we are now paying for with our privacy. Everyday objects are becoming connected to the internet at an alarming rate. There is so much more potential for us not to understand the implications of this on our privacy. Soon the very act of making tea will no longer be private, and Barbie is going to be surveilling your children. Now, we are being sold the benefit of this connected world. Our lives are going to be so much better. We are going to be so much healthier. We are going to have so much more time. And I know what each and every one of you is thinking. What have I got to hide from Barbie? Well, plenty. You probably just don't know it. The recent discourse that has been happening around migrants has changed thanks to the refugees. But just remember, it was just a few months ago that immigrants were being blamed for everything from low wages to the very destruction of the fabric of our society. Now, I'm a migrant to this country, and I was very alarmed to find myself being scapegoated once again. Back in my home country in the US, things aren't much better. We've got the front-runner US presidential candidates saying that they want to put the names of all Muslims into a database. Now, this week, Donald Trump has gone a step further and saying that he wants to block the entry of all Muslims into the country. Now, how is this helpful? How is demonizing an entire religion going to make the US any safer? But here's the thing, we can also use technology to turn the tables. I do a lot of work with marginalized communities around the world. These are people like sex workers in India and Cambodia, and also women who use drugs in Eastern Europe. They are using tools to collect information about police violence in their communities in order to prove how the state is perpetrating violence against them. These very tools that we have in our hands, the mobile phone, the internet, and also available platforms, available online mapping platforms like CrowdMap, which make it easy to collect data across geographic regions and protect and store it. In some places, it is safer to put information online than it is to keep it locally on a computer. The other thing, too, is these very technologies, this technology that you hold in your hand is being used to show how police are perpetrating violence against minority communities in the US. There's also some really great projects out there like Rudiment. What Rudiment does is it scans the internet for information that human rights investigators and journalists can use to better understand what is going on. Their first project is called Arcade, and what it does is it scans satellite imagery for bomb craters to then analyze the trajectory of projectiles and determine their origin of fire. In functioning democracies, we need transparency and accountability, which is why I'm also very excited by groups like the International Budget Partnership that works with local advocates to make government budgets and fiscal expenditures transparent and available for public scrutiny. They are also working hard to make sure that that data gets translated into meaningful information that can be used by citizens, such as the availability of health services, sanitation, and also education. I also get excited by groups like Fair Play Alliance in Slovakia that are using data from a number of different sources and making it available to investigative journalists so that they can hold the very powerful in Slovakia accountable. But we also need to support the efforts of the Electronic Frontier Foundation and Privacy International, who are working hard to make sure that we understand the implications of these new technologies, but they are also challenging the states when they are overstepping that fine line between public safety and invading our personal privacy. But most of all, we need to regain control. In this world of ever-increasing interconnected devices, we need to have a better understanding of what that does to our privacy. And that understanding, my friend, needs to be as easy for you to comprehend as that slip of paper was to me 30 years ago. Thank you very much.